The music world is numb today, stunned by the violent death of gangster rapper Notorious B.I.G. The tragedy happened here outside of the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, where the rapper, also known as Biggie Smalls, was attending a Vibe magazine party for the Soul Train Awards. Now, shortly after midnight Saturday, Notorious B.I.G. left the party and got into his car when another car rolled by and shots rang out. At least 5 bullets ripped through the door, killing B.I.G., who was sitting in the passenger seat. Dozens of heavily armed cops arrived on the scene as word of the shooting spread. The bullet holes in Biggie's vehicle are mute testimony to the gang-style drive-by shooting that took the life of the Brooklyn-born rapper, whose real name is Christopher Wallace. Smalls was rushed in his bullet-riddled vehicle to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Dozens of fans, many overcome with grief, held a vigil at the hospital.
They've got a number of individuals that they're speaking to right now, and we're hopeful that we can resolve this matter relatively soon.
These are pictures of the 24-year-old Biggie at the Vibe party just hours before he was killed. Eerie images of a man who had no idea of the violent fate awaiting him. Biggie Smalls was larger than life. The robust rapper was 6'3", almost 300 pounds. He was loud and boastful, known for talking trash. His music was apparently a reflection of his real-life experiences. Biggie made no secret he once lived a life of crime, even selling crack on the tough streets of Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant section, where he grew up. His debut album, Ready to Die, was an immediate platinum hit, selling more than 1 million copies. The CD thrust Biggie into the stratosphere of rap music. Batari Kitwana is the editor of the hip-hop magazine The Source, where Biggie appears on the current cover.
Definitely, as an artist, he is at the height of the game in terms of his understanding of the art form, in terms of his popularity, not just in New York, but, nationally.
Biggie Smalls was also embroiled in a rivalry between East and West Coast rappers. His competition, Tupac Shakur, who once accused Biggie of involvement in a 1994 robbery in which Shakur was shot several times. Biggie denied those charges. More recently, the two men battled verbally over this woman, singer Faith Evans, estranged wife of Biggie Smalls and the mother of his child. Shakur claimed in his music to have had a steamy romance with Evans. She reportedly witnessed Biggie's murder Saturday night, almost a carbon copy of Tupac's death in September. Ironically, Biggie Smalls' upcoming album is titled Life After Death. A startling ad shows Smalls posing in a graveyard near a tombstone reflecting his likeness. So far, no arrests have been made in the killing of Notorious B.I.G., and the murder has shaken the rap world, which has once again lost a star to violence.
Her name was Kitty Genovese, a woman whose murder became infamous the world over because nobody tried to save her. Listen to how it was reported.
At least 38 residents of this apartment building heard her screams and did nothing.
That's the legacy of Kitty Genovese, who was murdered in Queens, New York in 1964. Her story is taught in psychology classes, and her name is synonymous with people who look the other way when trouble happens.
Nothing, no witnesses, just a lot of listeners. It's the post-Kitty Genovese era. No one wants to look, they think they'll get involved.
But now, as the 50th anniversary of Kitty's murder approaches, bombshell revelations about what really happened. Kevin Cook is the author of the new book, Kitty Genovese, The Murder, the Bystanders, the Crime That Changed America.
The idea that New Yorkers watched and did nothing, didn't lift a finger to help this poor dying girl, stuck in the public mind, but it was a lot more complicated than that.
It happened here. Kitty Genovese was almost home when she heard a man's footsteps behind her. She ran, but the man caught up to her and stabbed her twice in the back. She screamed, "Oh God, I've been stabbed." What happened next? That's where fact and fiction take separate paths.
He fled, she turned and went back around this corner.
Kitty was attacked by a man named Winston Moseley. The author says the fact that she was able to walk after the initial attack probably led people to believe they didn't have to call the cops.
People are looking out their windows. They see Kitty Genovese here. They see her struggle to her feet. She staggers around this corner into the darkness And is no longer visible to the
She's
people.
no longer visible to the people over here. It was past 3 a.m. Thinking the trouble was over, people went back to bed. They were unaware that a wounded Kitty Genovese was still in mortal danger.
Kitty sought shelter in here. She was able to get into this door.
That's when Moseley returned and raped and stabbed Kitty to death in this vestibule. According to Cook, a man at the top of the stairs saw it happen, but did nothing to stop it. A tragic story, but it got much worse 2 weeks later when a front-page story in the New York Times declared 37 who saw murder didn't call the police. The author says that number was totally distorted.
There were certainly dozens of ear witnesses and eyewitnesses, but when you talk about the people who both heard something or saw something and knew what it meant, knew what was going on, I don't think it's more than half a dozen.
And Cook says one neighborhood man remembers his dad calling the cops on that fateful night.
He swears that his father did call the police, was put on hold, told the police, there's a woman staggering around out there, she's been beaten up, you need to come. There was no answer to that call. In those days, there was no 911 system. That's something that grew out of the Kitty Genovese case.
So the legend of Kitty Genovese was born.
Led to many sermons in churches, it led to gossip, it went viral in the way that things could in 1964.
Winston Moseley was arrested 6 days after the murder. He's been in prison ever since. And right or wrong, Kitty Genovese is remembered for what people didn't do to help her.
The phrase that came out of this was, I didn't want to get involved.
It was an emotional and private ceremony that touched those who watched the Kennedy motorcade silently pass.
He had a wonderful future. We'll all miss him.
We wanted to come down and just get some closure.
They're too young to have died. It's awful. It's a tragedy.
The Kennedy family, including John's sister Caroline, Uncle Ted Kennedy, cousins Maria Shriver and William Kennedy Smith, made the trip to sea aboard the USS Briscoe. It comes as no surprise that John Kennedy Jr. was laid to rest at sea. At times, it seems he was born on the water. Images like this are part of the country's collective memory. Carolyn Bassett's mother, Anne Freeman, joined the Kennedys at sea. Yesterday, her grief was palpable as she planned the memorial service at this Connecticut church for Lauren, who has a twin sister. A woman mentioned she'd just given birth to twins. Mrs. Freeman reportedly said, "I used to have twins." And now there's new information about Carolyn Bassett Kennedy's final day. Last Friday, she shopped at New York's Saks Fifth Avenue for a dress for Rory Kennedy's wedding. This is the $1,600 dress she reportedly picked. But on that day, witnesses said Carolyn also expressed concern about flying with John because he just had his cast removed. Meanwhile, preparations continue for Kennedy's memorial service in New York. Media are said to have offered as much as $10,000 for area apartments. But because the President and First Lady will attend, cameras are banned from the windows. And finally, this touching memory of John Kennedy Jr. The photographer who took this loving photo of John and Carolyn just 2 months ago received a personal note from Kennedy in response to the picture.
Thank you very much for sending the photograph of Carolyn and me. I would have been embarrassed to ask for it, but I'm most grateful that you sent it over. It's lovely, and we're glad to have it. Signed, John Kennedy.
Photographer Tyler Mallory believes the note displayed Kennedy's caring nature.
What a fine example of an insight to the real nature of this true gentleman.
Friday, around 8:15 p.m., Kennedy's love for flying took him here, Essex County Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey, where Kennedy kept his single-engine red and white Piper Saratoga. Today, a stunning report claims that Kennedy was concerned about making the flight at night and equally concerned about landing at Martha's Vineyard Airport. He reportedly said his wife, Caroline, was insisting they drop her sister Lauren off in Martha's Vineyard. The same report quotes Kennedy as saying that he was concerned about landing twice because he was not that experienced a pilot. Friday night at 8:38 p.m., Kennedy took off from runway 22. He reportedly intended to leave earlier, but Lauren Bassett was delayed at work. we made the same trip as Kennedy. As First Officer Mark Rado described the potential problems.
I'm having a very difficult time seeing where the land is and where the water is. This is true. This is what we would call featureless terrain. This is what he would be faced with coming into or out of the water like that. It's a pretty frightening prospect when you're not that experienced, I would think. Oh, yes.
On the night Kennedy disappeared, reports say a local fisherman saw a plane, possibly Kennedy's, flying around 40 feet off the water.
That was meaning he had no sense of horizon. He was looking into pitch black out here. Thought he was higher than he was, and ended up trying to level off too low, and maybe didn't make it.
At 9:39 p.m., about 1 hour into the flight, and about 10 miles outside Martha's Vineyard, according to radar, Kennedy's Piper dropped from 2,500 feet to 1,800 feet in just seconds.
What possibly would have happened?
Pilot Steve Kahn showed what could have gone wrong inside Kennedy's cockpit.
He might have been looking, and as he's looking, he's turning the yoke. He's turning the yoke, he's in a turn, and he's just looking to see something on the ground, and what happens is he accidentally just might give it some forward pressure. Well, very quickly, the vertical speed indicator is going to start indicating a downward trend, and next thing you know, he could have been in a dive.
John F. Kennedy Jr. was due to arrive on runway 6 of Martha's Vineyard Airport at 10 p.m. The pieces of debris found floating at sea have led many to believe that this was a violent crash.
Hitting the water at that speed or hitting the ground is really the same. It's like going into cement.